should be is the operative word here, live here to chat about all of the stuff we've watched this last like month because we had like a little cancellation for Valentine's Day. So you could all go fall in love. Hopefully you did. Kate and Carrie, it's been 5 million years since I last saw you. Good news, I'm seeing you on multiple screens because the stream is working now. Better late than never. We'll do better next week. How have you been? And do you bring me any news? Spoilers, I already know the answer is yes. Please go.
I'm good. I bring a ton of news. I can run through it real quick and then Carrie can do his. So, The Drive Away Dolls is a movie coming out. It's already come out. Terrible reviews makes me even more interested. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is another Henry Cavill movie. Very excited. Love Child starring Elizabeth Olsen. Fantastic. Can't wait to hear what that's about. There's also a ton of music news or announcements. So Maggie Rogers, Beyonce, Lizzie McAlpine, middle kids, Faye Webster, with Billy Gibbons for Fender, which is weird but awesome. And a little known artist Taylor Swift announced her 11th album.
I think I've heard of her. I'm so excited about that. Torture Poet's Apartment coming out April 19th. It is going to be the end of the British monarchy, as I understand it. So, as we speak, one of the internet's like micro favorite conspiracy theories right now is that Kate Middleton is missing. So that's just promo for Taylor Swift's upcoming album. Carrie, any news?
First of all, good evening, and I'm doing well enough. Um, a little bit of news. Obviously, we're all waiting in anticipation for the return of Only Murders in the Building. Um, there's been a bunch of news that's come out recently, obviously, about where they intend to take the show geographically, love it or hate it. Um, but there's also been some casting news that we've gotten. I
Yes.
think we're all sort of happy and excited that a fan favorite from season three will be returning in season four. Meryl Streep's character will be back. And we're also bringing some new folks to play in our sandbox with Eva Longoria,
Mhm.
Molly Shannon, and Eugene Levy. Or is it Levi? I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. Um, so it'll be really interesting to see how those characters sort of integrate with what we already have. Um, so I am excited and interested in that. There was also, I think there was a tidbit of news about, obviously, without knowing exactly how long the series is going to run, obviously, the people behind it are interested in doing multiple and multiple seasons. I don't know exactly how I feel about that, but I'd rather be in a situation where someone's looking and excited and interested to do more as opposed to saying, hey, when is this thing over with? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
interesting.
It's
And
really fun
and
to see all of the like cool casting news they have, both in terms of the returning characters, Meryl, and also the new cast. Did you guys see the like paparazzi shots of Meryl Streep and Martin Short leaving like what appeared to be a date? Was that just me that saw that? What are our thoughts?
I saw it.
so the question, are we blurring the lines? Is this real life? Is this like like method acting for the show? I don't know. It certainly speaks to chemistry, whether it's in front of the camera or behind and off screen. So it's a good deal. I dig it.
One thing about me, I love a blurred line. I love when the actors have like enough chemistry to where everybody's like, wait, are they actually together? Like, that's the biggest compliment you could give, an actor. And also, I hope they're together. That's so cute. Like, the world is awful. We need more of that. 10 out of 10. Okay. I brought a couple pieces of news. I don't know if you'd really even consider it news. Madam Web is out, and that's kind of making some waves, and not necessarily in a good way. I haven't seen it, but you would have to be living under a rock to not know that it's got terrible critical, reviews, and yet people also won't stop talking about it. So it's sitting in that really fun place, similar to the one Kate mentioned at the top. And that's one of a few press tours going on that are what I would lovingly call unhinged. The Bridgerton season 3 press tour is going on, and that's been kind of wild and fun to see what our season 3 cast is doing and saying. And we also have, I think since we last talked, really was actually when Mean Girls came out, or shortly around that time. And we've seen the unhinged Renee Rapp press tour, wherein everybody fell in love with Renee Rapp. So my question for you is, now that we're getting what I'm going to call proper press tours again, in this post-pandemic or mid-pandemic world, depending how you see it, what are your thoughts on recent press tour dynamics? What do you like to see out of a press tour when you're seeing interviews with the cast of, a movie you want to see, or a show you're excited to start, or, whatever the case may be?
Um, well, I personally like disaster sort of television to some degree, and there is there is that incredible dynamic of where we are now in terms of people who quote unquote have to do press tours and interviews, and you can quite honestly tell and sincerely tell that they would rather be any place on earth but in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it just makes for great television. And so I dig it. I'm for it. Obviously, it's something you have to do. You have to promote your product,
Mm-hmm.
but to a great degree, you have to be true to yourself. And it's like you can't tell everyone it's fantastic when you know it's a hideous bomb. But sometimes you just, you show up just so you don't get fined, as Marshawn Lynch used to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Similar to that, I kind of between the two of them are definitely things I have been taking note of. And it kind of reminds me that a lot of my favorite celebrities are the ones that are so comfortably themselves that they make other people uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
I think Dakota and Renee Rapp very much fit that bill.
That's such a good summary of the vibe they carry. And I understand, like, to an extent, the criticisms. I think mostly criticisms come from the place of people hating Joy, but like some of like, well, Dakota's filmography is not so good to where she should be acting like she's above Madam Web, or like whatever. Like, okay, whatever. Like, be a hater if you feel that way. But I think, like, if you're promoting a movie like Madam Web that I haven't seen, but it sounds like it might have a flaw or two, maybe a moment that's less than Golden Globes worthy or whatever, adding a little spice and interest makes it more fun for the rest of us. And it lets us know what tone we should watch the movie in. It lets us know that we should watch the movie with a tone of like fun and action and irreverence, which I like. And the same could be said for Renee Rapp. The caveat is that with Mean Girls, the movie is actually fantastic. So it's not like it needed sort of like an apology tour. It was more of a chaos tour in the best possible way. And she's just an otherworldly level of, kind of charming and hot. And I'll stop there, I suppose. But Mean Girls is great, and so is Renee Rapp. Moving
I,
on past the news, we've got our headliner. Well, actually, Carrie, did you have any other news? Did I cut you off?
No, I was just going to say that obviously, without knowing when season 4 is supposed to start, I think the guesstimation is at sometime between June and October, sort of like waiting for the cable man to show up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but sometime between June and October, I suspect we'll be getting more and better information as we get toward that date. But mark it down, get ready to watch. I can't wait.
I'm so excited. Only Murders in the Building, as we've seen other shows either return from, some like I guess not pandemic related delays, it's strike related delays. Got to keep up with my current, world falling apart events. As we see shows return and also new shows get added, like off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like Tracker, I think got like a ton of like press around the Super Bowl, which I watched. We won. I don't know if you guys noticed. None of them are as good or even in the same class as Only Murders in the Building. It truly is a fantastic show right now. Especially if you're not into reality television, because I do actually think there's some really strong reality television out there if like you're willing to kind of like set your self-love and brain cells aside and like enjoy it. But if you're not doing that, Only Murders in the Building is really top notch right now. So 100 out of 10. But we also have another top notch show to discuss tonight that a season has concluded since we last chatted, and that is Miss Scarlet and the Duke. And I'll kick us off with some questions. I'll just let you know the questions I have are not just about the episodes, like the final two, but more just kind of the season overall as a retrospective. So, starting with, in the words of the great philosopher Taylor Swift, Eliza is on her own and always has been by the end of the season. And in the final episodes, we see her support system kind of surrounds her to an extent. We see Ivy's always been there, and that's a huge support. But to a greater degree, Eliza is kind of on her own or has weakened supports. So William is gone, police are understaffed, Nash is suspicious / gone, and even Ivy like has her own thing as she should. But she's got a man to take care of, and she's not just there to wait on Eliza hand and foot at all times. Which is some of those are good things too, but what do you think of Eliza's end of season kind of growth and also isolation?
I can go first. So I think it's interesting in the scope of this season started very much with her coming into being the branch manager of Nash and Sons, and immediately alienating a lot of people because she wanted it her way. I realize that that's something she's done in previous seasons. It's not necessarily to be unexpected, but it was a very intentional choice because they could have just as easily kept on that staff. There's part of me that would say that they probably didn't want to do it because that would be a lot of actors to manage, and it's actually a pretty low speaking roles show.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that meta level of why they probably avoided that. But in purely in the story, I mean, it fits so well with her getting this new role and deciding to really clamp down and really hold tight to control and being independent. And I think throughout the season, she had a really unique and slow and soft and nuanced growth to accept that she does need her support system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because she's floundering or she's whatever, but she came to realize that she does feel better, she does operate better, she's happier, and just is more at peace when she has the people that she cares about around her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not even just even including Nash, but I think most importantly Nash, because of how at odds they've always been and how much their friendship is so important to how this season resolved, and how she has a very different perspective now on working by herself is now a result of no longer being able to work rather than a choice of being by herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That difference between like isolation by choice and self-preservation and isolation because others are leaving definitely stands out towards the end. Carrie, what do you think?
Um, it was an interesting season for sure. In a lot of ways, it felt like sort of like um, the second movie in a trilogy, right? There were a number of things that happened, and but obviously it did not feel finished in a lot of ways, particularly when the co-lead is sort of gone from the last two episodes for the most part.
Mhm.
But in terms of Eliza's growth, and here's where I'm going to lean on you to more than anything, because obviously I didn't come to this show until sort of later on.
Mhm.
But for some reason, I just sort of always felt, and obviously I may have been wrong, that basically her putting out her own shingle was a choice or decision or something that she could have done or obviously wanted to do for quite some time. So was there something that sort of prevent, and I know obviously the time period that we're talking about would obviously make that difficult, but were there other sort of blockades to her doing just that? Because obviously it felt like a pretty significant moment, but it
Mhm.
also to me felt like, well, duh, why didn't this happen some time ago? And maybe I'm missing something.
You're not missing something. And Kate, fill in the blanks if there's anything I kind of skip over, but there's a few things. One is getting funding to do that. Eliza's not at any point dirt poor. It's clear that her father seemed to have left her some money, but not quite enough to like start and fund a business by herself at any point. So she had that limitation of the capital behind her. And also, there was some talk in early seasons, but it comes up a couple times, I think, of just generally the fact that you're hiring a woman is often last resort, or as the show progresses, sometimes in very specific cases, they prefer a woman, but most of the time it's last resort because they can't afford anything else. So advertising that you're a woman may not necessarily get you that many more cases. Though we do kind of, even just over the course of the, few seasons as the years progress, you see maybe a tiny shift in a different direction. But I think those are the two things. Number one, she didn't necessarily have capital prior to Nash to really fund a full fledged operation that had staff as well. And number two, she didn't want to advertise what she or what society saw as a deficiency. And maybe to some extent, she struggled with low key seeing as a deficiency. Kate, what am I missing?
Y- Yeah, I on the very like basics level, I would say that that kind of covers it. That on a just practicality level, it didn't make much sense for her. I'd also say just more on like a character development level, the first two, even three seasons, she was very defensive and she was even more kind of, I'm right, you're wrong, like this is my way or the highway. And a lot of that had to do with insecurity. And I think within that, it probably had something to do with if she didn't put her name up there, she could blame her failures on something else.
Mm-hmm.
And by having to fully commit to like this is my thing, uh she's fully kind of putting her name on the entirety of her work. She's always worked under somebody else's name. And finally having this moment of I've proven myself as a investigator time and time again, and now I'm starting to prove myself as a businesswoman,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the confidence to stand on my own even though my isolation's not by choice, it's by happenstance. The isolation that I find myself in now is something that I can survive and deal with, adapt to, and make my own.
Mm-hmm. That's well said. And I think that's where she kind of gets growth through isolation, even though I think it's a struggle to watch a character grow through isolation. It's not the most entertaining thing. I want to see her with the other characters. As I was thinking of like the list of who she's isolated from, and you're listing William and the police, and to an extent, Dash and even Ivy. I was also thinking of, well, wait, in previous seasons she had the like female secretary side character who's like really into murders and all that kind of stuff, and we haven't seen them for a while. So that leads into a
Mhm.
question of storylines left hanging. A few things this season are kind of tied up with a bow. So police reorganizations, Eliza's new sign we talked about, and other storylines still remain out there. So William is still MIA in the Americas, and some other pieces. So what storyline are you most interested in seeing explored, and which storylines are you like ready to let go of at this point?
if you don't mind me jumping in.
I Yeah, you go first.
This is probably going to surprise you, right? But and I forget his name. I just call him the Redhead Kingpin. But basically, the guy who's temporarily in charge of the police
Yeah.
now.
William's
Um,
replacement.
yeah, his character is incredibly abrasive, and obviously he's designed to be. But I found myself gravitating toward his stories, particularly how he had to deal with the kid's name. I forget. I'm terrible at like character names, but you know who I'm talking
The
about.
Nepo
Um,
baby.
Yes, I really appreciated and had a great fun time watching those two interact, especially when the Nepo kid was trying to assert his dominance when he, quite frankly, was in over his head. I thought that was fun, and so I don't know how much of next season we'll sort of get to see a little bit more of that. Maybe I don't know because obviously it feels like that they're sort of like wearing into in terms of what their sort of places in the department are going to be now. But it will be really interesting to see if and when William comes back, um, how that goes. Because I don't see my man giving up that post easily. And the real question is, will William sort of want it? So I guess that would sort of be like the B story or maybe the C story, but I'm kind of interested to see where that goes.
In terms of the like abrasive redhead who like kind of seems to hate women, my thought of what they're probably doing with him is they're creating a character who would naturally like not vibe with Eliza, not respect Eliza, not want to work with Eliza, so that we get that gratifying moment when he's like, actually, you're pretty cool after all, you know, like you figured this out and like we're gonna begrudgingly work together just to show that she can you know, get the respect and camaraderie of police officers who are not William. I think that's what they're doing with him. But I'm with you on all counts. And I'm also very curious if William will want his spot back. I think he might want something in that general vicinity back. Kate, what are your thoughts? What storylines do you want to see more?
I, I had a similar thought about Charlie about the redhead, but I mine's a little bit more contentious. I The show has a habit of like doing repetitive rinse and repeat things with certain characters when they don't want to do anything with them. They have them do the same, canned speech over and over again. And he really susceptible to that. So if they do anything, the foil and kind of clamp down on how much he doesn't like Eliza, but has his own kind of growth and be like, oh, this is harder than I thought. Or if he does have to have begrudging respect, or if it is almost immediately William's back and it's more of a how are we going to make this work? All of those would be interesting, but I kind of want them to move away from him being this kind of 1-2 note guy, just being angry with Oliver and being angry with Eliza.
I do think we started to see a little bit of that when Nepo Baby, and I don't remember his name, but when he was sort of starting to realize how
Oliver.
effective and good of a detective that my man, I think you started to see a little bit more of the depth of what his character could be. And so your point is well taken. I just hope that we sort of get to dig into that a little bit because obviously he's going to have to deal with Eliza, and Eliza's going to have to deal with him. So I think there's an opportunity to show some emotional depth and growth without it having to be right away, hey, we're buddy buddy. I do like the abrasive nature of what their relationship can be, professional.
I think what I would like to see more
Mhm.
of is, well, and what I'd like to see more of is exactly in the same area as what I want to see less of. And I think it's possible that this is a controversial opinion. Okay, so first of all, character name escapes my mind, but you know the guy who's technically Eliza's employee who's like super loyal to Nash?
Yes.
I'm over it. I'm over him because
Yes.
he's standing in the way of something. I want to see Eliza get good, interesting employees They do not need to be loyal to her. They do not need to kiss her ass. That's not what I'm after. I'm not annoyed with him because he's not loyal to her. I just think his interest has run its course. His whole like deference to Nash and like non-deference to her, it ran its course. They got like one kind of funny moment, which was like the slightly kink adjacent thing when he needed to be like ordered to do something, and that was pushing it at that point. Like, great, check, and you're done. I'm over his character. Like, there's nothing further they can give me from him. I want Eliza to hire new employees, and they don't have to be new characters that we haven't met before. I referenced that one girl, don't remember her name, who was like really into like murder, whatever. And she was like helping her. They could be characters we've totally seen before. Her gay ex, he was fun and fresh. Malcolm, was that his name? We didn't see very much of him this season, but he's great. It could be
Where's
anybody. So it could
where
be,
where's the Jamaican dude? What was his name?
say it again.
Um, the Jamaican guy, right? He was
Was
Jamaican
his
dude,
name not
right?
Malcolm?
It could have been. I don't know, but if that's who you're talking about, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to see him back. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to see him back. I would love to see him be, because we want some employees who are like
Oh,
in the office and work for her, and then we want to see her have like these accomplices, these people that are, they come in and they consult on a case, but they're not like working in an office type of person. They're like out and about doing things. So I want to see more of that around, and I just don't need like old office guy. Kate, correct me, what names am I getting wrong here?
that you were trying to think of Moses.
Moses,
I
not Malcolm. I was so close.
agree. I I kind of agree. I don't necessarily know if they'll bring back the ones that you listed, but and I think where I'm kind of differing is maybe I don't want them to have kind of like the standard we have 10 different detectives working at that her office like they did at Nash. I want her to have a really deep relationship with a bunch of informants.
Yeah,
So like
which
I
is
think the
kind of what
most
Moses
interesting
was.
stories we got this season, yeah, Moses was like her very, he could go into the very seedy areas
Hmm.
and not be suspicious. And I want her to have similar ones with women, men and women of all different runs of life. And I think that would be an interesting way of taking it. Because having to basically be the manager of a bunch of different detectives is just not going to be as interesting. Is probably another reason why they never went down that road, really. But having her have to kind of dance back and forth between all these different walks of life with all these different informants that she knows and have a more ongoing relationship with, I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. And to do it without being racist, classist, or the intersection of the two. I know that's a tall order.
Do I know you have a
Yes.
bunch of questions to ask about this,
No,
but
go ahead.
do you ever suspect that like the show would try to um sort of develop like a season long sort of villain, like a serial killer sort of situation, like sort of her Moriarty for a show like this? And obviously not without knowing how many seasons they're going to do, but could you imagine them trying to go that route, say next year or fingers crossed, even the year after that? Or
I
do
would
you just
love
sort of
that. I would love that. Because they haven't really yet, have they? I mean, they've had
I,
arcs, but not long.
I yeah, they've had like 2 episodes work where it was the same person, but that would be really cool if it was like an entire season of one person kind of d- stringing together what's like petty crimes or smaller crimes, and then you string it back together to figure out it's all one person. It'd be really
And then it's her father, and he wasn't actually dead. And
sad.
just a default soap opera storylines. Would you want that,
Yeah,
Karen? Do you
that
think that
or
this
it's
season?
they always, what do they always say like that, like a hero is only as good as their villain, right? And it would be because this season's quote unquote villain was essentially the financial constraints of the police department, which can be interesting, but not as incredibly compelling as seeing seeing Eliza like at her wits' end, trying to solve this significant mystery that will actually, sort of matter to how well her her private investigation agency does, right? Because I could see her sort of failing through the season at some points, trying to figure out who or what is going on, and that would be sort of the driving force about whether her agency, whether it can survive if she can crack this case. It's kind of like the sort of would be her Moby Dick sort of situation. It's like, hey, I need to do this because I need this to survive and thrive. And I think it would be interesting to give her something to sink her teeth into because we generally just sort of get like the crime of the week, which can be fun, but I think it would be nice to sort of have a through thread for that kind of thing for the season.
It would pair well with her and William kind of being together because as they achieve stability there, pairing that with like a chaotic, long-standing villain that they can't seem to get could be interesting. It would have to be a good villain too.
Yeah.
I
Um,
have a
Go ahead.
I have a brief interjection of who it could be.
Yes.
Arabella.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, give her a female villain. Now,
I'm
the
so
thing
glad.
is, like, we loved Arabella. So, me wanting her to be a villain, it comes from a place of love. I don't want her to be a villain of like she's trying to take William's heart
Mhm.
or like some kind of love triangle bullshit. I just mean like, they had like these moments where she toyed with villainy, like, did she sell the jewels and is she cheating people out of what? I don't know. There was like some I don't remember exactly, but it was some small scale, like minor financial stealing thing, but not like killing people or whatever. Actually, did she kill her husband? I don't remember. She was probably justified if so. Whatever the case may be, if she went down kind of like a killing spree and was, like some sort of psychotic, but it can't be like, oh, she's just trying to go after William. Cause like, it's one of
No,
those like, if he's torn
it would,
between the two of them, she can have him type of vibe.
yeah. And it would be sort of really cool if it retconned her being some sort of like not just like a murder thing, but just sort of like a significant criminal mastermind. And sort of her whole plan all along was to make sure that William and Eliza were not together because she felt like those two together would have been the only folks who could have thwarted her. And that was her ultimate end game.
See,
Or
let
even
Kate and
more
Carrie
chaotic
Mm.
is or even more chaotic is what's her plan to be with William to make him even more crazy for Eliza so that they would get in their own heads, have this falling out, and then them being so like focused on their feelings about each other that they miss the entire thing. The
or
It's
crimes
maybe
that are
civil
she
happening
war.
loves
currently.
Eliza, equal opportunity.
It would be
You know.
Captain America Civil War all over again.
No, literally. I'm so excited for next season, mostly because, and I hate to say it, I don't want to praise a man, gun to my head. However, they do need to get William back. I'm sorry. This is Miss Scarlet and the Duke. You need both of them. I want more of her than I want of him, but he still needs to be there. Unfortunately, that's just reality. The question that I had was about the villains, and it sounds like we're on the exact same page on what kind of villain we want for next season, and sort of what we thought of the, kind of overarching villains this season, other than the obvious villain of William when he left, acting like he'd been rejected because he was too much of a pussy to ask her out. But that was probably misogynistic of me to use that euphemism. Let's talk about what else we watched slash read
Before
this week.
before we go on, can
Yeah,
I pose two questions that
yeah,
just sort of
absolutely.
popped into my head? So William leaving for the last two episodes, without knowing anything about the actor, do we feel like that was a narrative choice or did he have some sort of conflict? Because quite honestly, narratively, him leaving just sort of it was just sort of a dead narrative. It
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 was a
just
vibe
didn't make
killer.
a whole lot. Yeah, it just sort of felt
There
like
had
that.
to be a conflict. Kate, was there a conflict? Do we know?
I I didn't see anything about it. I didn't hear anything about it. I'll say like it was definitely a vibe killer and they didn't do a ton with him doing that, so it is weird. You would think that if it were just a narrative choice, they could have at least had like a scene with him on a blue or like a green screen ship like sailing over to the Americas or something. So it does feel kind of like a scheduling issue. I'll say for these last two episodes, he was missed, but it wasn't painfully so. But if we had
Right.
to go on much longer, his absence would be felt.
Yeah. I don't want to go into next season with this whole like, when will William come back? Will it be episode 2? Will it be episode like it's got to be right away. No offense with Love
Yeah.
and Light. Um,
And
I
the
was gonna.
second,
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say the second question. If I don't know if you were
Yeah, no.
it sort of goes to like Endgame. And when I think about like titles of a show, I always sort of think about what it really means. And obviously, we're talking about Miss Scarlet and the Duke. So Endgame here, do we feel like that there's going to be a shingle up one day that actually says Miss Scarlet and the Duke, private investigator? Is that what has to happen?
What a good question, Kate. What do you think?
You know, there's some part of me that's kind of rankles at the idea because there is the character arc of her making that choice, being both financially able to make it as well as like being confident enough in her ability to sell herself like that. I
Mhm.
also just like a good, they said the album name.
Yeah,
So it's a toss up.
I can really go either way. Yeah, it depends on how well they do it.
Yeah.
But I do think Endgame, well, I guess if I play it out, I do think Endgame is them working together. Like not just getting together, being married, like that kind of thing. Like actually working together. Because what we've seen them kind of fight about so long has not really just been like about their feelings. It has been about working together. So Endgame has to be them, coming to some kind of like peace and flow of working together. So it makes sense that we see a placard or a card or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll add this real quick. With Endgame for full season, why he's dedicated to his job. And it is like he would be kind of the far more moral compass, like, let's do this because it's the right thing to do, kind of like how he plays of the two of them,
Hmm.
which is interesting that she's been that moral compass in those last two episodes without him present.
Right.
But I could now with the backstory, I could see him being like, I want to do this work, but I don't always have to do it with the police force.
Hmm.
And I think he would gladly take the flexibility and kind of comfort of being able to work with her because he'll be able to, make sure she's okay
Hmm.
while also being able to kind of make rules like she can,
Yeah. You're cutting out a
which you can
lot, but
tell is kind of
I agree with the
suspicious of that
general
future for them
sentiment
anymore.
that you're saying of like they have very different moral compasses, but they're complementing each other and they're getting to the point where they're more and more complementing each other. And even in the absence of him, we see her moral compass swing his direction, or at least that's what I'm piecing together from the audio with my last two brain cells. I
That is
was
exactly where I was going.
Okay, perfect. You communicated it well. I was gonna move us right into what else we watched this week, but I am legally obligated to mention a piece of news that we all skipped over that Stormy pointed out in the chat. Thank you, Stormy. Which is the news that Stephen Amell is leading the LA Suits spinoff. And one of the reasons I mentioned that is because I blocked that out from my mind. And the other was because pretty much everybody online seems to have the exact same opinion. So it didn't really, I don't know what to mention other than that that woman's legacy is now in the hands of Stephen Amell. Do you guys have thoughts?
Mm, Is he playing a villain?
It sounds like he's playing the Harvey Specter type archetypal character, which is like the industry guy who has to like break some rules and do some stuff and, just like gets away with it because he's like a 45-year-old white man in a suit with blue eyes. Like, okay. The whole thing with Harvey is that Harvey was never interesting. Mike was a scam artist. Jessica was incredible. Rachel was a fabulous paralegal who was like balancing being like smart but dealing with confidence issues. And the whole thing that made Harvey interesting was Donna. So it is entirely possible that we have what the description of Stephen Amell's character sounds uninteresting to me. It is entirely possible we have an uninteresting character in our quote unquote lead, but Suits was very much an ensemble show, much more than a lot of ensemble shows are. So I really, like, am I interested in seeing Amell leading the LA Suits spinoff? Like, no, but if it wasn't him, it would have been another person exactly like him, like just another variant on the mold with like slightly different specifications, change a few words in the homework type of vibe. I'm curious what the other side characters are. Because when I talk about the original Suits, like Harvey's the last thing I mentioned. No offense. I think Gabrielle Mock did a wonderful job. Like, this is not even me being like a hater and I hate all men, blah, blah, blah. But like, what we think of is Donna, Lewis Litt, and most importantly, Jessica Pearson, the person who actually got the original spinoff of Suits. So toss me some good side characters and we'll see what we can work with. I happen to follow a lot of the original Suits cast, not just like the main six, but like a bunch of the like side folks. And a lot of them, get a lot of work these days. But we'll occasionally mention it or comment on it. And I do wonder if we will see some like side fan favorites pop up, even if it's not like the original cast popping up all that often. I won't jinx it, but there's one in particular who was quite a side character. She only showed up a couple times, but she was like a personal favorite of mine. And I just get the vibe that she might be showing up for this. So we'll see. Good question, Stormy. She also mentioned, she says the woman in suits carried the show. She shudders at him having a love interest because that's not going to match up to the chemistry of Emily 100%. And speaking of Arrow alum, she mentioned Josh Segarra on Abbott Elementary. Stormy, you are wonderful at transitions because that's exactly what I was going to jump to. What else we watched this week? I'll go first so that I go super, super short and save all the time for you guys because I'm really curious about what you've watched this week. I'm just going to highlight two quick things that I watched. Number one, Abbott Elementary is on season 3. The show is phenomenal. I never, ever, ever feel more confident recommending a show to literally anybody than when I recommend Abbott Elementary. I know that the person hearing it, all ages, all whatever, is going to love it. You can watch it with your family. You can watch it alone. It is just phenomenal. It's feel good. You're not going to cry. You're not going to be depressed. None of the above. The cast has fantastic comedic timing, fantastic chemistry. Quinta does an amazing job, both with the writing, with the acting, whatever. That show is a gem. And with something that's centering around somebody being a teacher, that's a workplace thing, you want to see the characters grow and change and elevate, whatever. But you also still want to see them be a teacher. That's what endeared them to you in the first place. Like, it's not going to be like, and now she's a member of the Board of Education. Like, okay, whatever. So seeing like her get this like district internship where she's still like somewhat in her classroom, but still getting to like work with the district and trying to like keep parts of herself, work with Josh Segarra, who is fantastic. And I really like Janine and Gregory, but Josh Segarra's character has a good little bit of chemistry with Quinta, I gotta say. Season 3 is just fantastic. They had cameos from like Jalen Hurts and the other people from the Eagles. Like, I'm telling you, you can watch this with literally anybody and they're going to be happy. Are you guys watching season 3 of Abbott? If not, you're so welcome. Dive in.
I am absolutely behind on Abbott Elementary. But I need to catch up. From what I saw, I remember and I loved it. So I just got to catch up.
It's so good. It's so good. Kate, watch it. The other one that I'll briefly mention, not nearly as good and definitely not as wholesome, Love is Blind season 6 is currently airing. In fact, 2 new episodes just dropped today, and I've watched all but like the last 30 minutes of the second one. I mentioned at the top of the show that there's some really good reality TV out there if you're willing to, kind of like disrespect yourself and turn off your brain and just absorb it. And Love is Blind is that. This season has absolutely no good or wholesome people on it, in my opinion, with pretty much no exceptions. But there's some strong, entertaining characters who are really giving us some fabulous entertainment. Again, if you don't love yourself. So those are my 2 recommendations, definitely in order of quality. Carrie, you want to go next?
Sure. I'll start with The Irrational. I did watch the season 1 finale. I don't know if you saw it yet, Cami. So I don't know if you want me to spoil it or not,
You
or
can
I can.
spoil it, but I am still behind just 1 episode.
Well, I'll talk about it in a way that sort of gives you an idea of what I thought about it without
Okay.
spoiling it.
No
Um,
judgment either way.
Yeah, because obviously, what the question was going into, because obviously, without knowing whether there was going to be a season 2, it was, hey, is this overarching mystery going to be resolved? And it was. And I'll be quite honest,
Wait, the
it's
bombing
sort of,
mystery was resolved this season?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
that's shocking to me. Go on. I
yeah,
did not
yeah.
expect that.
Yeah, well, they said that they were going to resolve it, and they did, and it was resolved almost in a way where, like, it's just pretty, we're done with that, right?
Uh-huh.
And so obviously there'll be, I mean, it's like, well, if that was sort of your driving force for like your entire adulthood, sort of like, what do you do now? And I was expecting to get that obviously in season 2, but there was a tease at the very end of the finale that tells us exactly where season 2 is going to be going and what they're going to be dealing with. And I'll just say this, I wasn't freaking happy about the setup for what we're going to be getting in season 2. Not because I don't think it'll be interesting. I just had an issue with what they did or how they're going to what the driving narrative will be for season 2. It sort of
Can I guess?
I
Can I guess? Sight unseen. Can I
sure,
guess?
sure, go ahead.
At least one of his love interests is about to have a villain arc.
No,
Oh, okay. I thought
no,
they were
no.
taking Rose or ex-wife or somebody and giving them a villain arc.
See, that would have been, I mean, sure, that would probably be cliche, but I probably would have, that would have intrigued me. But
Right.
season two does. I just don't like the tease of how we're going into season 2. But neither here nor there. I thought the way they wrapped up I think the way they wrapped it up, season 1. Sure, it did not feel as personal as I anticipated it feeling, and that may very well be because I missed a few episodes and wasn't quite clear on the sort of interpersonal relationships that Alec had with the people that were attached to this, and so it wrapped up in a tidy sort of way, but it didn't hit as personally as I would have anticipated or probably would have liked. I don't want that to sour you on it, but I'd be interested to see what your take is on the finale, probably being more intimately familiar with sort of all the characters and people that we've come across so far in the season. Um, so I did watch that and can't wait for season 2.
Mhm.
And if you obviously don't know, I've been on an Orphan Black. I can't call it a rewatch because I had never seen the show before. It came out, what, 2013? Feels like forever ago. Um, but probably through episode 6 or through episode 7. And it's certainly easy when you see Tatiana Maslany sort of like inhabit these different characters because I don't want to say it's easy, but you put on different clothes and you sort of like take on what that character is about. But what's so good about how she does it is if the screen was black, if the screen was blank and you just heard talking, right? You would immediately be able to, and it's not just, and certainly it's some to some degree, it's because of some of the accents that some of the characters have. But my point is that she inhabits these characters also differently. You absolutely feel like there's like four or five or six different people playing this role.
Mhm.
And so she if she didn't get all the awards, someone should like give her all the awards now. Um, but like I said, going into it, I mean, I was sort of familiar with the show in that she played all these different characters, but I had no idea what the show was about. And
Mhm.
so going into it flat-footed, not knowing sort of what's going on, it feels like I think the show hits a little bit different in that way in terms of it's like walking into like something after it's been going on for a handful of years and someone says get on this fast moving train and that was the
Mhm.
pilot and you just sort of feel like you're hanging on, right? It's like every time it's like when I'm watching an episode I can't be thinking about or doing anything else. There are some shows you can put on in the background, but this is the kind of show where it feels like you have to sort of prepare yourself to watch it and then give yourself some time afterwards to sort of like let the adrenaline sort of like come down a little bit. So I am digging the freaking show. I can't wait to finish up season one so I can get to season two. Um, I'm trying to think if I don't know that I have any sort of nitpicks or anything that like brings me down on it. It's just freaking cool, man. The only bad thing that I can say about it is, like I said, I don't feel like it's a show that I could binge because it feels like it would take too much out of me. It's like an adrenaline rush. So I need to like it's probably good that I watch it one at a time.
Tatiana Maslany is incredible in that show. At the time that it was airing, it was an ongoing thing of like give her all the awards. And she did win a lot of awards for her performance as 5 billion clones in there, but not enough. The thing about watching so many of them at once, because I remember the pattern I eventually fell into was like I would save up like two or three and then watch them in the span of like 24 to 48 hours, not necessarily like back to back, but like pretty close together. And that worked well for me because watching any more than like two or three, it really started to get to be like, okay, like I'm losing the plot and it's a bit much. And wait, what happened where? And who is this actually? And, I don't think this is a spoiler because I think you've already seen this at this point, and this doesn't really spoil anything about the plot. But there are moments where you will get to see her as a clone playing another clone, like she is playing clone A pretending to be clone B. So it's like
Yeah,
Inception cloning. Like, oh, it's
yeah.
incredible. They're so, so good. Um, wow, I missed that show. I need to rewatch it. I'm jealous that you're getting to watch it for the first time right now. Kate, I know you were kind of cutting out there for a second on audio. We're gonna cross all our fingers and our toes that we can hear you. And
Yes.
oh, it sounds like you can hear.
Okay.
Tell us what you watched or read this week.
Read over 16
That
books since we last talked.
keep going.
So
It was a little robot-y, but it sounds like your robot is becoming human. Keep going.
okay. I've just pitched a couple for you both. So Cami, I think you might like Emily Henry's Beach Read, which is what I finished today. It's very sweet. It has very specific Joe and Professor Bear vibes,
Okay.
which is something I know we both enjoy. I think you both should go see Argyle. I watched that while we were kind of away. Um, it also has kind of bad reviews. If you don't think about the plot at all, it's really fun.
That's easy. I
Um,
never do.
it's it's kind of like the early days of Marvel, where that was kind of the whole point too, where the plot was there, but really was it? It was a lot of fun to watch though.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of how this is. To me, the comedy was fun. The physical acting was fun. The plot, don't think about it too hard. Your nose might bleed. Um, After that, I started catching back up on all Creatures Great and Small, and a couple other period dramas that I've kind of picking back up: Belgravia, Poldark,
Mhm.
Gilded Age, just because I fell off and I want to get back into watching those. So you'll probably hear me talking about those more in the future.
That is a great lineup. And I am so excited to see Argyle. It just sounds too far up my alley for me to dislike it.
It it was really good. It was really good in the sense that I had a lot of fun watching it, but there are a handful of scenes that every time I think about them, I'm like, this makes no sense. And there were definite moments where the CGI was a choice, but
Hmm.
it was really, really funny. And I wasn't expecting it to be quite that funny, but it really made me laugh.
Well, it sounds
Yeah.
great.
I'm gonna have to wait for a rainy day to catch it.
Yes. Okay. We've reached the part of the live stream that I am most excited for. And let me give you all a little bit of backstory. In discussion for tonight's live show, like weeks ago, somebody mentioned that I think it was you, Carrie, mentioned you already had your woman of the week picked out. And then Kate was like, I already have my woman of the week picked out. That's strange. And I was like, I literally just earlier today decided I have my woman of the week picked out. And then we all had this like Spider-Man standoff of like, is it did we all pick the same woman of the week? And I've been going back and forth. I just feel like at least one of you guys has the same one as me, or maybe you have the same one as each other. There has to be some overlap here because it was just too much of a coincidence. I would have us all say it at the same time, but very much obviously there's too much of a technology delay for that to not be a hellhole. So I'll go first. My woman of the week is Risa Tisa. Raise your hand if your woman of the week was also Risa Tisa. Damn it. Okay. Carrie, you go next.
That was the one that I was like, if it's not mine, it's this one.
Wait, you knew that was going to be mine. Did you?
I knew that was going to be. I thought you were either going to say the one I picked or Risa Tisa.
Okay. It's Risa Tisa, hands down.
Okay.
Carrie, do you know who Risa Tisa is?
I do not.
Okay, you're about to be in for a ride, but I'm going to let you say yours first.
All right, my woman of the week was Dakota Johnson, which
Oh,
is
hell yeah.
crazy.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did we not? Any of us?
Wait, none of us? Kate, who's
None of
yours?
us.
How were we all
Bridget
saying it at
Mindler.
the same time then? Okay, go ahead.
Bridget Mindler.
Okay, fair. That's a good choice. Well, we all have great choices. Okay, we'll go back down the list. I'm going to explain mine as quickly as possible. Risa Tisa is a woman, real person. Not this is not a fictional character. Her name is a screen name, but Risa Tisa on TikTok. She had made a couple like funny TikTok videos. She's a woman from Atlanta, Georgia, and she in one of her videos alluded to the fact that at one point she had been married to essentially like a con artist. I don't think she used that exact term, but just sort of like, oh, I'd been married to a con artist. And then people started asking her about it. And she's like, okay, like I'll tell the story, but it's like a long story. So she makes a series of 50 plus, 10 plus minute videos explaining this whole story. And millions of people, myself included, Kate, sounds like you included, watched all or part of this story. Like she held our attention for I think she put out like 30 plus hours of content over the span of about 4 days telling this story. It's somewhere in the high 20s hours of content, I guess I should say. Um, and held us all spellbound in that amount of time over those number of days, telling the story of her getting scammed And the thing that really makes her, not the story necessarily, but her, my woman of the week, is a unprecedented level of like generous vulnerability that she had in this story. She's she's moderately funny, but she's not telling it like a comedian. This is not like a TikTok comedy storyline. She mentions things with humor and grace, but she also has this vulnerability of like, I was scammed because I wanted this to be true. I intentionally overlooked this. Like, she doesn't try to paint herself in this like perfect light of like she was the victim or whatever. She's extremely vulnerable about like she really wanted to be married and she really thought this wasn't going to happen, or she was really willing to like overlook these faults because she never thought it was like as bad as what it was. And then these just absolutely bizarre things happen. It's like a whole storyline: lost wives, fake dead children, a twin nobody knew about, just so many like twists and turns, and the story's insane. But it's the way she told it in a way that you don't in real life, and you certainly don't online, hear people tell stories with that level of self-awareness and vulnerability. Absolutely just incredible work. She deserves every check cut to her. She deserves every HBO movie deal that's coming her way. 10 out of 10. Okay, Carrie, you're up.
It'll be quick, and like I said, it's Dakota Johnson, and it sort of goes back to obviously the conversation that we had about sort of the being like the press tour and sort of being the face of something, right? And she sort of had to be the human shield for probably one of the not so great movies of our time. And somebody has to stand there, someone has to take the shot, someone has to take the slings and arrows. And you would anticipate or you would expect that those slings and arrows would take her down a peg. She'd be troubled by them, but she seems nonplussed, man. It's like, you know what? This may have been a terrible, horrible, no good movie, man, but this thing will not stick to me. She stood there, and you have to absolutely respect that. It's like, hey, this thing might not have been the best, but it ain't gonna take me down. It may take somebody else, but not me. I'm just like, whatever, man. This is Tuesday. Let's keep it moving. Wednesday will be better. So I have to give her credit for that. I do find it, and of course, I think her what is it, her management company may have ultimately paid the price for this disaster of a movie, but still, I don't think it will stick to her. I don't think it will stain her. I think when something else comes along, nobody will be attributing this disaster to her. And so if she can shake that off and keep it moving, man, that's certainly deserving of a Woman of the Week award.
100%. Well said. Kate?
Okay, so mine was Bridget Mendler. So Bridget Mendler was the star of a pretty popular Disney show from, I don't know, when I was a kid watching Disney Channel.
So not that long.
And not that long ago, admittedly. Um, and she did pretty popular Disney movies like Lemonade Mouth. She had some music through Disney, and then she kind of just dropped off the face of the planet. Throughout the past few years, I've heard talk about her a couple times, probably honestly because some of the co-stars from that show have done some other things and they'll mention her, it'll come up, and you'll see a couple of things, comments here and there, and then she'll dive back down, and it's not she's done anything. But maybe 2, 3 years ago, I heard that she had gone to Harvard and she was at MIT. Well, 2, 3 weeks ago, it came out that she had gone to Harvard and has gone to MIT and is now the CEO of a startup called Northgate Space, where they'll be developing uh, communication satellites here on Earth to help improve communications to space.
Wow.
And in the next tweet, she also came out and said, "Hey, by the way, I also, since like I've kind of fallen out of the spotlight, had a kid. I'm a mother and a CEO, and I'm just killing it at life." And we're all like, "Yeah, you are. You are really doing well."
That's incredible. I remember seeing bits and pieces of that, but I didn't actually know too much about like where she got her start. Like I'd seen mention of her filmography here and there, but I'm not familiar with it. But seeing that, I'd seen she was CEO of something, but CEO of satellite communication technology company. That's incredible.
Now, don't you see some sort of universe where like her like real life kids like wander into her office one day and start communicating with some like alien being out in space, and then
100%.
Disney creates a show based off that. Turns out to be some wacky Martian.
Yes.
Full circle.
Yes. A full circle moment where her kids become the inspiration for the next great hit. Well, good for her for even just making the leap from entertainment to a different industry sector. I think we see people kind of go one way of like, oh, I quit my 9 to 5 to like go to LA and try to make it. And that's why I'm on Love is Blind. And then you see, the lawyer to TV producer pipeline and all of that. But seeing somebody go from like being an actress at one point to doing something else, successful or just meaningful, successful is kind of beside the point in their community. I think it's pretty incredible. So good picks for this week, even if they are different from mine. I will see you guys in 2 weeks or so. I believe it will be like the second week in March at that point. And we'll know the end to The Bachelor. We'll know the end to Love is Blind. A lot will have happened, and not all of it will be reality show stuff. We'll know the end to The Traitor, I think, by then too. Carrie and Kate's information is in the description down below. Thank you for your patience with the technical issues. Bye.